Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting Vobes show with me, Richard Vobes, on the 11th of March 2019. Hope you are well. Welcome. Andy Joy has joined. The lovely Julia is here. Hello to you. Ian Beddoes is here. Glenn Johnson, welcome to you. Anne Osborne, Claire Leach, Matthew Holdsworth, Paul Watts, Ian Beddoes. Lovely to see you. Marvellous. I am wearing purple today, in honour of the lovely Julia, who can't be here this evening, but it's just me, I'm afraid. But never mind, not to worry. Hope you can hear me, hope you can see me, hope everything is working in glorious Technicolor, that it's not too overexposed, underexposed, weirdly exposed with my bald head. Anyway, welcome to the Vogue Show on this one fine Monday, live on Facebook, repeated on YouTube. Brilliant. Thank you for coming along. Today, we're going to have some topics to talk about. I don't know anything. You're the ones with the opinions. I want to find out from you what you think. We will just have a friendly discussion on various things. That is the idea, ladies and gentlemen. That is the key thing. Now, just to let you know, I have this rather amazing television. You can't even see. It's just here. You can't quite see that. It's... I suppose I could tilt the camera down so you could see it. Hang on, let me just see if I can do that. Don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to tilt the camera down. You'll see a little bit down there. There, ladies and gentlemen, is a very large television. I'm just going to tilt the camera back up. I don't know if that is back to its normal height. I shall see when I get the feedback, because I am watching the screen here. Oh no, that's too high. Hang on a minute. Sorry about that. I need to just plonk you down a bit more. Bink. There we go. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So, yeah, I got this very large television. The wonderful Liz Housden has very generously donated that to ye oldie balding explorer blokey, which I guess is moi. Is everything slightly on the slant, I think. I don't want to fiddle about with the camera as we do the show. Just looks a little bit slanted, but not to worry. Hang on, I need to just move my comments down a bit. Bear with me. Oh, by the way, Cynthia Walder is here. Mark Selwood, Shirley Ward, Simon Brown. Hello, Simon Brown. Welcome to the UK, by the way. Carl Osborne. Good evening, Carl. Hope you're well. George Timferley, Emily Champion, John Berger from the lovely US of A is here. Linda Kane. Evening all. Lovely emojis are coming up. Apologies if it is a little bit skew-whiff. I'm not quite sure. Probably need to shunt the camera that way, but I'll faff about later. And let's just scroll down. Yes, tilt. All right, tilt. Hang on, I'm going to tilt. There we go. How about that? Is that a bit better? Hopefully that's a bit squarer. I don't know. It may have gone even worse. Linda Kane says, my word, that's big. Yes, the television is... that looks worse. I don't know whether I'm making it better or worse now. How's your goggle box? Yes, well, I was going to get onto that first of all. What's getting onto that? Massive, great big television, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely fantastic. It's going to look superb. It's going to sit here. It's going to sit on the back wall there. I'm going to reinstall my desk, probably, so I can sit on there, have the laptop on here, because I want to evolve the show, ladies. I want to evolve the show, yes, from this primitive caveman sort of exhibition of me, some fool, into a much better show. And I want a lovely television over there. I want to encourage debate. I want to encourage some videos. I want to get... you guys creating stuff and sending it in like in the old days. And also, I want to try and encourage new people to come along, and rather than the same 30-odd people that we get every week. As much as it's lovely to have you guys, it would be nice to try and drag some more people along. That is the plan. And it's going to take about a month or so to sort of organise that, because I know I'm out doing the Bald Explorer stuff the rest of the time, and everything takes, you know, yonks to get stuff done because of the pressures of work and all this kind of caper. And as ever, my scrolling doesn't work, so I'm missing the comments. Judith Oakley, Wendy Wakelin, hello to you. Fiona Cooper, Linda Kane, maybe it's the house. Yeah, it could be. It's an old house. I'm in and out the hotel. Oh, I'm out of the hotel, says Mark Selwood. Oh, don't quite know what... what you mean by that. Laura Riddle even, he says, "Where's the TV?" Did you not see? Did you not see? Did you miss it? Did you miss it? I just showed it to you. I'm not going to move the camera again because I'm likely to bugger it up one more time. Hey ho, that's all good. So that's the plan. And I'm also toying with rebranding the show. Instead of the Vobes show, which is sort of, pretty non-compliant, maybe calling it Talk to the Vobes. I'm just thinking aloud at the moment. Talk to the Vobes, because I want to encourage you guys to talk to me, and it would be lovely to get telephone calls and like maybe some Skype calls on a subject, so that we can all. I don't want to use too much of the internet because I don't have that much of it. I had to sort of pump a little motor in the background just before the show and squeeze enough internet into a bag so that I've got enough to get it out to you. And as you know, sometimes I've obviously not squeezed enough into that bag. And it runs out, or there's a little hole in the bag and I've had to use a Hoover bag instead. Evolve, not revolve. Yeah, I don't want to revolve. Thank you very much. Who said that anyway? Oh, yes, I should have guessed. It was Robert Croser. Yes, Kevin Hall didn't get much notification the governor was on. Well, you know that I'm on. It's a Monday. What am I supposed to do? I can't give you a written invitation every time, Don't you know? Don't you know? They're just scrolling the bits and pieces down to the bottom. Richard Suggett, hello to you, sir. Hope the video that I helped you film was all right. Have you edited it up and is it online yet? Linda Kane says, "We do talk, but you can't scroll quick enough to see our gems." I realise that. John Berger says, the side benefit to a plasma TV is you won't need to adjust your ESSI to heat the house. Plasma TVs can get really warm. Oh, well, that would be nice to be in here. Nice and warm. It is a plasma. I hope it's not going to take too much electricity. The whole point is to try and save a bit of juice. Hey-ho. Henry David Allen, lovely to you. Thank you for joining me. It says, there was a crooked man and he lived in a crooked house. What are you saying exactly? Are you saying I'm a bit crooked? Dean Cooper says, that's better. Good evening to all, one and all. Paul Couchman, hello to you, Paul. Lovely to see you. We must come back and do another live show from the Regency Townhouse at some point. Anthony Jones, anybody been out picking wild garlic? Free food, he says. Actually, I was out today with a chap called John Mays, and there was some sort of weird mustard plant, which was this green leaf that a friend of his was growing, and he was trying some of that. His wife tried it and said it was disgusting. I haven't tried it. Dave Ford, hello to you. Nice to see you. Getting loads of lovely comments, Dave Ford, to the recent videos that we did. So thank you so much for that. Looking forward to the Jurassic Coast, which will be great. Robert Croser is saying, love the video with Kevin today. Very good. Thank you very much. Yes, we spent the whole morning on that with a crew of 20 young toddlers operating all the equipment, and we just did our thing. Ian Beddoe says, you've been to Mr. Burger's. It's far. Is it far from Los Angeles? Yes, it is quite far from Los Angeles. It's about 3 or 4 miles down the road, I think. Paul Couchman says, love to. It'd be great to do another show from there, which would be good. Any excuse for the lovely Julia and I to dress up in costumes again, because we thoroughly enjoyed that. That was one of the highlights of last year, actually. So that was good. Mick Bain says, hi. Now, okay, so I want to do some... subjects. I've got some subjects written on a bit of paper here to see if see how this goes. We've done this sort of thing before, of course. So I've just picked some things. First thing, I have to say that some worrying news. I'm tripping over on the television, which is behind me. By the way, it's so heavy I can't pick it up. Needs 2 of us to pick it up to put it in position. It's huge. Some worrying news at the moment, and this is genuine. Billy's girlfriend Sharifa, I've just discovered, has gone to A&E this evening with some pains in her stomach, and they're keeping her in overnight. She works, luckily, at the hospital, and she went incredibly pale, got numb in her fingers, and is not feeling very good. And so they whisked her straight down to A&E, and in she's gone, and luckily she's been able to jump the queue, and they bunged her in a ward straight away, and she's staying the night, which is, okay, that's good, that's very good. But it is a bit worrying, isn't it? And then I heard on the news, ladies and gentlemen, I heard on the news this evening that the government's plan is to get rid of the 4-hour A&E whatever you call it, time limit protocol, which is a shame. So that's pretty grim, isn't it? So I don't know what you think about that. And I would like to know, if you've been to A&E, what's your experience of A&E? Have you had a good experience? What was it like? When was the last time you went to A&E, and what was it for? And how were you treated? Paul Couchman, going back to the open day, says he's got... going back to the live show, he says he's got an open day on the 28th of May, which could work. It could work. I've got some... I may be going to Lincolnshire in May, but I need to work that out, which weekend it is. Mark Selwood, what day of the week is the 28th, Paul? That would be interesting. Paul Couchman says, have you anything on the 15th of April, which is Ian Beddoes talking to him? Fingers crossed that Sharifa is okay. Thank you, Matthew. I'm sure everything will be all right. But, of course, Billy, who's madly in love with her, is at her bedside. He came in briefly and he's gone back there. So, you know. Now, my last encounter at A&E, apart from going with other people... for example, lovely Billy, of course, with his brain hemorrhage. The last time I actually was in A&E for myself, do you know, I cannot... there must have been a time. I went in for an eye operation, which, of course, you all know about. But when I've actually gone into A&E as an emergency, I do remember one occasion, I think. But, do you know, it's so vague. But I'd be interested, I think, because of all the stuff that's happened to me... that's pretty low on the list, but I'd be interested to know, have you been to A&E and what was it like? So please let me know. Mark and Nikki were in the building. Happy birthday to Nikki. Is it Nikki's birthday? Happy birthday, Nikki, if it's your birthday. Claire Leach says, I'm sorry to hear that. Not that it's Nikki's birthday. I think that's probably to do with Sharifa being in hospital. Matthew Holdsworth says the 4-hour rule hasn't worked anyway, as they can't cope at it, sadly. So yes, so it seems that they're now going to use I guess a priority thing. So people who've had a stroke or a heart attack or is in a car, no longer like a road traffic accident, no longer has to wait 4 hours to be seen. They're obviously, but I thought that's what was happening anyway. You're going to prioritize those people who are suffering, but I assume that there was a bit of a running clock. I thought the 4-hour thing was after the triage nurse was supposed to see you, but the last time I was in A&E, there wasn't even a triage nurse, that you just went up to the counter, and it didn't matter whether blood was pouring out your head or not. You just had to sit down and then, you know, you waited to go into the cubicle. But I think it makes much more sense if somebody whizzes round and actually just assesses the situation, goes, actually, you are quite serious, you better come in. You're not so serious. Sorry, mate, come back next Tuesday. Glenn Johnson says, hasn't been met since 2015. What hasn't been met? Dean Cooper says, we called up for jury service. That's not to do with A&E. Andy Joyce says, not many hospitals stuck to the 4-hour rule. Yeah, I guess, you know, it depends. Billy once went in because he said he had a bit of he thought he'd pulled a muscle in his back, and he went to A&E. And I said, that's not really what A&E is for. He was young at the time. And he said, yeah, but it hurts when I walk. And I said, yeah, that's because you pulled a muscle in your back. You know, if you're really worried, you go to your doctor, and then you go and see a specialist, you see. That's not what you said, oh, well, I'm here now, I'm going to go in. I said, well, okay, but, you know, you're basically hogging up the space. And then he was subsequently told to, on your bike, it's not really an accident or an emergency. And I think a lot of people don't quite know what to do, because it's so difficult to get a doctor's appointment, and it's easier to go and walk straight into A&E, and if you're that desperate, you're going to wait, aren't you, at least to be seen. Whereas a doctor's appointment, they've got this ridiculous idea, I don't know if this is the same with you, where you ring up at about 8:30 in the morning to try and get an appointment that day. But what you can't sort of do is ring up at any other time and say, oh, any chance I could come in tomorrow or on Wednesday or Thursday, you know. The last time I rang up my doctor to go in and see them, it was like, yes, you can come and make an appointment, but it's 3 weeks away. I said, well, that's no good. I would like to see him soon, but it's not an emergency thing. It's not an urgent thing. I just want to see him about this, that and the other. And they said, yeah, well, it's a 3. And I said, well, hang on a minute. There's either ring up at 8:30 and get to scene that day or possibly the next day, or it's ring up and have an appointment 3 weeks away. There's no happy medium. Surely later in the week I could just get a slot. No, you can't do that. It is a bit bad. Let's just go back and have a look at some of these messages that you're sending me. So David says, I went to A&E a couple of weeks ago after going on a steam train and getting smut in my eye. Oh yes, I think you did tell us about that. What happened in the end? Were you okay? Presumably you are okay. You're not wearing an eye patch, and how would they know? Because that might be a big black patch of smut, as far as I know. Maybe it's you're not watching too much naughty stuff on the telly. If you watch too much smut, apparently you do go blind. So that is an old thing that I used to be told at school. Emily Champion says, last time in A&E was a month ago. Oh blimey! Oldest daughter shut her thumb in the car door. Had to wait around 4 hours in the kids department. I think it's the toughest thing, isn't it, when children have to go to A&E and children have to wait 4 hours, because that just seems like they're waiting for hours, not 4 hours, but for hours and hours. Children you would think that they could have a children's nurse there who would whiz round and do whatever you needed to do for children, or prioritise them, because their perception of time is so different, and of course their intellectual capabilities of understanding that they just got to sit there and put up with it is not the same as an adult. An adult can deal with things. You can deal with a certain amount of pain if you've been given a painkiller, and you can sit there and deal with it, whereas a child can't. And of course, it's very disturbing for other people in the hospital if you've got children who are moaning and running around, or not running around, but just nagging, and you're sitting there trying to deal with whatever issue you've got, and there's other kids there hanging about and making life a misery. You don't really want to say, well, children should go into this padded cell over there, which is noise-proof, soundproof, but you sort of do feel that, don't you, if you're sitting there going, oh, God, we're all suffering, we don't need to suffer that on top. So yeah, a lot of sitting around. Bring a good book, says Claire Leach. So that's good advice, I guess. Nikki Jess says, thanks Richard and everyone for the kisses. Alex Wicklock has joined. Hello Alex, very nice to see you. Thanks very much. Let's just whiz down and catch up with some more of these comments. Matthew says, I've not had to go to A&E myself since I was 8, when my grandfather dropped a paving slab on my big toe. Oh, God, and broke it. That sounds really painful. We know it's like when you stub your toe. That must have been awful. This was so long ago. It was at Cookfield Hospital. I've not given a bandage or Smarties for... I got given a bandage, right? A bandage of Smarties. What is a bandage of Smarties? For being so brave, which is not... Hello, Joe Smith has joined, by the way. Linda Kane says, too many go to A&E inappropriately. Yes, if you've ever been inappropriately, appropriately is a strange looking car, but you can get in it and you can go to the AE in that. Carl Osborne says, I've only been to AE once because I had some dirt in my eye. Yeah, you see, dirt in the eye. And I couldn't get out with eye wash. Was in... hang on, sorry, Carl. It's just whizzed past me here. Just coming back to catch up the rest of your comment. Couldn't get it in my... Was in and out in just over an hour. Oh, wow, that was good. With a good experience. Brilliant stuff. I mean, I guess if you are going to go to A&E, you've got to pick your time, haven't you? And that's what perhaps can put people off going in the first place. You think, oh, it's a Saturday evening. I'm not going in now because it's going to be forever. Mark Selwood says, I would like to say mostly I've had a wonderful service at A&E, but back in 1997, I was sent home with a broken hip when they misdiagnosed that it was a pulled hamstring. This is obviously things are going to happen where they get it wrong. And that's a difficult scenario, isn't it? Because presumably under the situation, under the circumstances, they're doing their best. But you just don't know. Maybe they are tired. My sister works in the nursing. She says they work 12-hour shifts. She says we do get tired. You know, on the 11th hour, you are sort of dead on your feet and going, yeah, I think that's Yeah, looks like your leg's hanging off. Well, just chop it off. Oh, it was your finger. Sorry. And the notes get into the wrong place. You know, it's very difficult. Claire Leach says she's been in for seizures and a broken broken toe. Hang on, I'm well behind. I'm trying to catch up. Because oh, that was sorry, I've gone too far back. Hang on, bear with me. Claire Leach, oh yeah, for seizures and a broken toe, and also for a nosebleed that wouldn't stop. And that's a worry, isn't it? Because you think, oh, it's just a nosebleed. It's just a nosebleed. Come on, you will stop eventually. And then there's that whole business of sod's law that you'll go, yeah, I know. I'll go to the blooming A&E. I'll get in there. Sorry, my name's so-and-so, so-and-so, and da-da-da. I've got this nosebleed. It's been doing it for an hour or two. It won't stop. It really won't. I've got buckets and buckets of blood. I don't know if you need a transfusion because I've saved it all. Some of it's now a bit congealed. You could make nice jelly out of it, actually. A bit tasteless, but, you know, good for, what's that sort of black pudding that Robert Croser up north eats? Anyway, you get in there and you just sit down and it stops. Bound to, isn't it? That's sod's law. Judith Oakley says, last time I was in A&E was with my ex-husband about a year ago. His face had an argument with a bowling ball. He had facial fractures. You had an argument with your... Was that bowling ball thrown by his wife by any strange quirk of fate? Vicky Allen says, hello, Richard. Hello! We're talking about A&E. Dan Thompson has arrived. Thank you very much. Hang on, scrolling down to catch some more comments. Evolve Wonderful, says Paul. I'm not quite sure what that is. Kevin Hall says last time he went to A&E. Oh, yes, Kevin Hall's got a gruesome tale to tell about A&E. Was last year with an eye injury. Had some drops when I was told I had scratched the eyeball. Yes, the eye is a horrible... It's a good thing. Obviously, it's a good thing. But it seems to me it's one of those things that it's such a major sense that we have. And it seems one of the most delicate things that we also have. And in many ways, I'm glad that I have my eyes now, my single eye, protected behind glass, because that seems to be very good. So that's good. Getting a GP appointment is more and more difficult. No wonder people go to A&E, says Judith, which is absolutely true. Saw me in 5 minutes. It was sorted, says David. So, you know, we're getting a different opinion on or level of service. I guess some things will be how busy they are, of course. I imagine that's all partly down to it. Matthew says most hospitals fortunately split A&E into adult and paediatrics these days. Certainly that's the case in East Surrey. Well, that does make sense. Down in Worthing, I don't think we do that. I have been in A&E and seen all these children. Dan Thompson says, wish I could go with you to Lincolnshire, Richard. My ancestors are from there. Oh, well, you know, let me know. I'll have a look and see if I can meet some of them, which would be nice. If you've got any messages for your ancestors, Dan, I'm happy to pass them on. Ian Beddoes says, try throat cancer, Richard. No, thank you. Very kind of you. I'll stick to 20 a day. I went to my latest bi-monthly checkup last week and said I had a sore tongue. The next day I was having a biopsy. Should get the results next week. My fingers are crossed for you. Try not to worry about it. Just the basic remedy is to drive a dirty, great big RV around and have lots of fun. Alex Wickslock says, hello from lovely Lancs. Hello, Alex. Vicky Alum is saying the doctors always say if it's urgent to walk in the centre at the hospital, if you go there, you have to wait a day to be seen. I think we need more doctors for everyone. That's very true. I think that makes perfect sense. Judith Oakley says A&E usually have separate wings. Oh, right, for children. Maybe because the other thing is that if you're a mother or a father, there's no reason it shouldn't be a father either, you may be at home looking after the kids and something happens to you and it's you that needs to see the adult, but you've got to bring the kids with you. Of course, that's another point I hadn't initially thought of, so that does make reference. Sorry, Richard, it was a bandage full of Smarties. Oh, a bandage full of Smarties. Oh, that's not... I hope they didn't melt on your arm. Glenn Johnson says, my sister is an SRN, sister-in-law, an ambulance person. Proud of them both. Oh, well, and sister-in-law. My sister is an an SRN, and sister-in-law, I got it, is an ambulance. Yeah, my My sister's a nurse, as I mentioned. Henry David says, if I go to A&E now, I take earphones and watch the Vobes show while I wait. The best thing to do is to put that on loudspeaker. Then they'll get you through the system far quicker, because they won't want that being put out to everybody else and upsetting them, because obviously it'll make everybody ill. My daughter was born at the Cookfield Hospital, says Anne Osborne. Oh, how lovely. Were you there yourself, or did you send a... No, you had to be there, didn't you? I had to think about that. Rachel Horton, she's Daniel, says, how's the new TV? It's fine, thank you very much. Vicky says, how's your big telly doing, Richard? It's just doing on the floor. We did speak about that at the beginning of the show. If you weren't here, I don't want to repeat myself, but it's just... I've got... I need to... I'll tell you about it later. Let's just crack on for a moment, because we've got another subject to get through. Andy Joy says, what annoys me is a GP will sit behind a desk, throw tablets at you, but will send you to the hospital for jobs they can't do in the practice, i.e. lancing a boil. Yes, well, you wouldn't really want him to get on a horse, would you, with a great big lance and you're standing there with the boil on your chin going, I hope you blimmin' well hit, because the last patient you had, William Tell, that son has got a blooming arrow in the top of his head. That's not nice, is it? Now he's down at A&E. I'm sure he won't survive that. Emily Champion says, that's so dangerous. Having 12-hour shifts, it will cause more problems than solve them. And I think you're absolutely right. Personally, because they used to do 8-hour shifts, then they upped it to 12. He draws breath. Claire Leach says, I cannot fault the NHS. They've always been exceptional and looked after me wonderfully, even when they might have been working for more than 12 hours. Oh, absolutely. I don't think anyone is faulting the actual workers. Perhaps sometimes my sister will talk about the system being a bit creaky and lots of ways of improving it, but it's like you've got a massive, great big boat and you can or ship. And you can see, actually, if you were to go there, it would be a quicker way of getting to the destination and everyone would be happy. But it's so slow manoeuvring that to take these shortcuts or not to go more directly is much harder to get everybody to be on board to go in that direction. Rose Brooker, hello Rose, says A&E in Nottingham were brilliant with me. Last May, I tripped over and broke 3 bones in my foot. Didn't have to wait at all. Oh, that's marvellous. Fantastic. Good for them in Nottingham. Robert Croser says nosebleed is known as espitaxis in the trade. I'm sure I said that wrong, but anyway. Mark Seward says, I always take my work jacket off when I go to our A&E. I work for hospital parking. Yeah, back of the queue, mate. Back of the queue. Poor old you. What sort of injuries do you get? I get, cars running over your toes, reversing into you on purpose, thinking you're a sleeping policeman. That's what I'm imagining. Claire Leach says, it did stop by the time I was seen, the nosebleed that is, had to have my nose cauterized, so painful. Ouch, yes. Nobody wants to have that. You can only block your nostrils up for so many seconds until you need to breathe again. Emily Champion says, a girl in my class once accidentally cut her eyeball with the corner of a piece of card. She was wearing glasses at the time. Blimey. No, don't take that literally. I've already been blind in one eye. Judith Oakley says, husband learnt his lesson. Don't rugby tackle someone from behind when they're about to throw a bowling ball down the alley. Ah, yes, that's true. I thought they were having an argument, or you were having an argument. Oh, maybe he was having all right, yeah, I'm just going to tackle him. Kevin Hall. Hello, Anne Evans, by the way, welcome along. Says, if anyone saw the photos, you'll know that Richard was about to say about his trip to A&E in 2012, where his face met a brick wall, causing terrible facial injuries. I ended up drinking soup and coffee through a straw for 2 weeks. Yes, he told me the intimate details of that. It was horrific, and it's on Facebook on the Bald Explorer group pages. Poor old Kevin. Took this silly, well, not silly, but, something that anybody could have done. Just jumped over a wall, caught his foot or trod wrongly. Bang. Oh, nasty. Doesn't bear thinking about. So, yeah, there we go. Nasty. I'm nearly caught up, ladies and gentlemen. Who will pay more tax without moaning? Do you know, I think that's a strange argument, because I think people would pay for services if you felt that the tax was actually going to do the job you're paying for. I think when you look at what the government, and it doesn't matter which government is in, very often the impression you get, and it may not be true, but the impression certainly I get, is that you pay your taxes, but actually the efficiency is just not there. And I think people would pay more if it was incredibly efficient and the money went to where you thought it was going. I think half the time the money doesn't go, or if it does go, you hear of all these huge wasted stories. The amount of stuff that is thrown away. When you hear of things like in the hospital, Billy and Sharifa came back when they started working at the NHS and told me the amount of waste, because it's medical waste, or the amount of food, that stuff can't be reused, and this, that and the other, because it's such a huge organisation. If it was a small shop, you could take some bits home or give it to this, the other. And I don't know. I don't know whether that argument really, you know, if you just knew that society would do all these things and it really worked incredibly well, I think people would pay a bit more. It depends by how much you're saying. That's really the question I would argue. Matthew Holdsworth says these days most doctor surgeries are huge and can do minor ops. I've had one or two with my doctors. You've operated on your doctors? I think that's the best way. Spitfire glasses. Yeah. Well, that's called safety glasses, aren't they, Dean? Dean Cooper says, water in hot glass. What pub did that come from? Water in a hot glass. Yeah, true. John Berger says, I'm not saying anything about health because I am appalled by the profit-driven system that we have here. He's from the United States of America, of course, with respect to insurance. The NHS isn't perfect, but at least you don't have the fear of going to a doctor over there. Lots of people won't go to a doctor, he says, or an emergency room, our term for A&E, because they have no insurance. It's absolute embarrassment. Yes, and I know a bloke who I speak to in America quite a bit, who's told me, you know, many times he's had toothache or some minor problem, or some internal thing that he's worried about, and he's just fearful for not going because he doesn't have the insurance. And I think the principle of being free at the point of delivery is something that is a very, very sacred animal. And I wouldn't want to have to pay the insurance, because if you can't afford it, it's very difficult. That said, it's a whole new argument about who should be entitled to that free at the point of delivery. That will save that for another day. Mark Selwood says, I've had one bad... sorry, my eye's going a bit loopy. I've had one of our car park barriers come down and crack me on the head once or twice. You're not paying attention, are you? You're not paying attention. You're too busy ogling the women as they get out the car and cross the car park. You know, those lovely nurses. Also, one of our car parks is called the Gravel Pit, and guess what? Yeah, what? You've gone down into the pit itself. Okay, let's move on from that subject. Keep those stories coming, but thank you very much. That's very interesting, and it's the amount of text and stuff and the participation is very encouraging. Thank you for that. There's this in the news also, this terrible air accident in Ethiopia, the Ethiopian air crash. And there's lots of people obviously involved in 157, I think. I don't know if that's with the crew or what, but that's a tragedy that shouldn't have happened. This new plane, particularly, that's come out and is the new sort of class up, and two of them have gone down recently, and now 100 of them have been recalled, or they've been whatever they call it, stranded, not stranded, stood down, whatever the term is. And it's made me think, yeah, would you travel by air? I know it's still the safest mode of transport, isn't it? But there is that for me, I am quite fearful about travelling by air. Luckily, I don't have to. I know you're more likely to have a car accident or walk across the road than be in an aeroplane that crashes. And if you're 20,000 feet or whatever it is, and you come down, chances are you're not going to walk out of that alive. if you have a car accident or get hit by a car, maybe you would come out of that alive. You may have a life-changing accident which may make your life intolerable, or it may not. I've actually had a couple of car accidents from driving, crashed into things many years ago now. Hang on, gulp coming up. And if I had to have the car accident versus an aeroplane accident, I'd rather have the car accident. Also, there's a measure of control. Not if you're the passenger, I grant you. But if you do have the accident and you are able to open the door, at least you've got, unless you plunge into a ravine or, you know, underwater or something in an ordinary accident, at least you can get out of it. You know, you don't have to do anything particularly weird. Sorry, that's my phone making funny noises. You don't have to do anything particularly weird like go down chutes or get into parachutes or have the ground so far away there's nothing you can do. Be interested to know what you think. Do you fear? Are you someone fearful of flying? Do you grin and bear it? Do you take a pill, have a drink, get up there? Or are you fine with it? There's obviously, most people do not have accidents in aeroplanes. It's silly to even think that it is a thing. But when a tragedy like this happens, it focuses your mind. And for me, that element of I'm not in control, at least if I'm in a... Nearly had an accident there with this television behind me. At least if I'm in a car and I get hit by another car, there's a strange chance that I can either swerve and miss it. If I'm the passenger, I'm hoping that I can open the door and crawl out before the car explodes or whatever it is. That to me, you've got a bit more of a chance. All right, if you're trying to drive to Australia, bit of a long journey. So that would be interesting. Let me just go back and catch up with your comments. I'm interested to know what you think. It's your show, and your comments are what goes well. Watch YouTube for the dumpster drivers. You'll be shocked by what you'll find. Oh, okay. I love watching Dr. Martin. I don't know where that came from. George Timperley says, the last time I was in A&E... Hang on, George. I've just got to get back up to your comment. He says, the last time I was in A&E was when I got a drumstick thrown at me, narrowly missing my eye, and I had a massive bruise there. I thought my eye socket was broken. Yes, well, not nice to have. Yeah, a lot of flying things obviously can do damage to your eye. Andy Dalglish says, all credit to the staff of the stroke unit at the Royal Sussex County Hospital for their compassion and professionalism. Again, most of these professionals do a brilliant job. That, like in any profession, you're going to have a few odd people that have odd days, maybe just odd days, you know, they just get pissed off and the next person who comes happens to be you and they just don't treat you 100% because we're all human, and they may have been shat on by above and they're just feeling a bit rough, you know, or they're just having an off day. We try to have good days, all of us, I'm sure, but we all suffer from bad days. Emily Champion says, it sounds like Carry On Nurse. Yes, that's right. And, oh, matron, no, stop mucking about. It could be, couldn't it? Grounded, thank you. Yes, the aeroplanes have been grounded. That's right. Matthew Holdsworth says, I always travel by air, no problem at all. Yet. I added the yet, but that's true. Vicky says, puts me off flying anywhere now. I'm with you, Vicky. It's irrational. I know you can give me the stats, but when I get onto an aeroplane, I went on what do you call it? A microlight. Now, microlight is no more than a go-kart with what looks like a kite above you, a microlight, a kite, with a little go-kart engine, like a lawnmower engine on. I felt much safer, even though I could look through the frame at the ground a couple of 100 feet below me and think, yeah, if I fall out, I'm going to die. There's no question about that. I felt much safer than that because it was outside. I wasn't in a tube. There was some measure that I could take the thing off, and when it hits the deck, I could do the last jump. You know, mentally, I thought I could get out of it, roll or something. Being stuck in a cylindrical tube, to me, is, I don't know, just not fun. Vicky Allen says, oh, well, I've just read that, says puts her off. Emily Champion says, I haven't been on a plane for nearly 13 years. Yeah, no, I can't remember the last time I was on a plane. Well, the last time I was on a plane, I think when I went to America in 2007. Coming back from America, actually. Robert Crosser says, I'm going on holiday to Morocco this Thursday on that very plane. Oh, well, it can't be on that very plane because that very plane is in bits. Where it crashed. I don't think you'll be on that one. You might be on a very similar one, but he says he's not looking forward to it. No, but that's the thing. When you get a plane crash like that, you may well be going on holiday yourself or on a business trip, or there's people you know who are on business trips or going places. When my lovely daughter Georgie went to New Zealand on her own with a friend on her own to New Zealand on the other side of the world, my worry wasn't that they were going to get into trouble over there. My worry was it's a long journey in an aeroplane, and what will happen? What could happen? It's strange. Kevin Hall says he's never flown. Fantastic. Claire Leach says, luckily I don't have a passport, so I can't fly. Vicky Allen says, I think I would take a train nowadays. Never worried about flying when I was young. Isn't it strange? When we're young, we're indestructible, aren't we? And probably I was the same. It's a very interesting point. When you're young, nothing will ever happen to you. As you mature, you start to think, hang on a minute, if that happens to me, all the things that I've aimed for, I think maturity does get you a bit scared because you're probably feeling a little bit, I don't know what is the word I'm looking for. You want to stay safer because suddenly you've got more invested in the world, haven't you? You get to a certain age, you've got children, you don't want to die or get injured, you still want to see them. You've probably got a mortgage you carry on paying. When you're young and perhaps you don't have a mortgage or you're just, it's not so worryful. I'm not quite sure. Mark Selwood says, I've only flown once internally and I'm fearful too. If I had to fly abroad, I would, but I would rather not be up in the sky. Very difficult to fly abroad if you're not in the sky. You'd be skimming the ocean. Andy Joy says, Boeing need to ground the 737 MAX. The new MCAS anti-stall program is causing so many issues. I'm not quite sure what all that means, but I'll agree with you. Vicky Allen says, let the train take the strain. Yeah, that would be a good idea. If you could get the train to actually get off the platform. Judith Oakley says, I love flying, but when it suddenly occurs to me that I'm sitting in a tin can thousands of feet in the air, then I begin to panic. Landing is my favourite bit. Yes, well, they say takeoff and landing is the bits that if you can get up in the air, you're all right for the whole journey. The one incident that really scared me more than any, not so much the fact that the plane might fall out the sky, because we have so rigorous tests and things, but it's that bloke who decided to commit suicide. Do you remember that, about 5 years ago? The pilot who got into the plane was depressed and decided, I'm just not going to respond. I don't know can't remember what he did to himself, and the plane just crashed. And you're at the mercy of this one person, and if they're determined to do it, they're determined to do it. Claire Leach says, I'm scared of flying when I did fly. Yeah, I mean, I never used to be, but I think there's just, since 9/11, you've got, if the terrorists aren't going to hijack the plane, then things, because what you don't think about, unless you're in the industry, of course, is that planes are taking off every second and landing every second, taking off every second, and landing all over the world. More planes that, every time you breathe, probably a plane is taking off. And every time so the actual odds are so remote that anything can happen. But for me, it's a psychological thing. Andy, Matthew says, I'm one of those who enjoy the travelling as much as the destination. Well, I do enjoy the travelling, but perhaps the flying, I'd rather go, I'd rather go slower and film everything. Andy Delcley says, I'm terrified of heights but love flying and have to have a window seat. Yes, I am actually the same. I don't like heights, but when I went in this microlight, no problem at all. Glenn Johnson says the passengers are the last to know. Last year we had 3 technicalities. The fire engines following the plane was the first we knew about it. Yeah, of course the passengers aren't going to be told anything. I'll tell you a story about that in a second that I believe is a true story. It's not my story, but it's the bloke telling me was on the plane. I'll tell you that in a second. I've flown across the Alps and across a war zone, being Yugoslavia, says Dean Cooper. Kevin says, I have missed out so much because of not flying. I have missed out on not trips on visiting my cousin in Barcelona. Yeah. Emily says, I went to Murcia. Some redneck stood up with a Corona in his hand and shouted, who wants to see me fly this baby? Not quite sure all of that. Nikki Allam says a lot of pilots now put the plane on autopilot, and that scares me. Yeah, because you never hear, does the autopilot ever, get a diploma in flying? Does the autopilot ever take the test? That's what I would like to know. We know the pilots do. You never hear about the autopilot, do you? And anyway, we've seen that film Airplane, and we've seen it's just a blow-up picture of a blow-up doll, as it were. Mark Selwood says, would a microlight have a good chance to glide down instead of dropping like a stone? Depends if this bit on the top fell off, I suppose. Clearly says, I'm with you, Richard. I hate not being in control and being trapped in a cylinder. So quickly, this story, when I used to work on the bill, there was another actor friend of mine who was working on the bill, and we were dressed up as policemen doing our extra jobs. And he said he went once, I can't remember what country it was, but it was like going to Japan. Let's say it was Japan for the sake of argument. It was some other country. And he was flying on this long haul flight. And he said he was sitting next to this window. And he was sitting next to a bloke who was sitting next to the window who was terrified. And he said, oh, are you frightened of flying? And the bloke said, yes. He said, I'm very nervous about this flight. And he said, oh, don't worry, I've flown a lot. And honestly, a lot of people get scared. It really isn't anything to worry about. You'll be fine. And the bloke in the window said, yeah, that's easy for you to say. He said, but he was looking at the wing. And he says, look, the wingtip is, can you see that? It's moving a bit. And he said, I'm sure that's fine. They wouldn't have taken off. And the bloke sitting next to this chap who I knew turned round and said, I'm the designer of this plane and that should not be happening. Well, you can imagine that my mate suddenly went, oh shit. And he was terrified. And then apparently the plane had an altercation. It came down, it landed, and when it landed, it cracked in half. Nobody was killed. It wasn't a... I don't think, like the tail fell off or anyone got sucked out or anything. But apparently it cracked and it shouldn't have done that. And they landed. Everyone was fine. And this bloke, he just said, that's my terror story of flying. It was awful. A lot of this talk is making me want to go on holiday, says Richard Suggett. Yes. Do you know, I don't go on holiday. I don't really have a holiday. I don't know what I would do on holiday. I'd have to go and make a film or something. Henry says, I see a lot of people coming to my office saying they wish to go to one of our tours in Europe as we go by train, and they don't like flying. Perfect. There we go. That's the way to do it. Vicky Allen says, went to Nice 7 years ago when over the Alps the plane started going down. Everyone's screaming and the oxygen mask came down, and that was the worst flight ever by British Airways. And of course... you only need to sort of go through a bit of turbulence, don't you? And you think the world is coming to an end. You're starting to think, did I write my will? Is it all there? Claire Leach, Kerry wants to go to Norway because of the black metal. She has never been abroad because of the black metal. I don't know what the black metal is. Is it something they dig out the ground? Nigel Sadler has joined. Hello, Nigel. And he tripped over the television again. Glenn Johnson says landing is just a controlled crash. Yeah, I guess it is. Nobody wants an uncontrolled crash, I suppose. Andy Joy says, aviation has been my hobby for 35 years and I've worked around aircraft for many years. It is still by far the safest way to travel. And yes, I have paraphrased, not paraphrased, I've, what is it when you put it up front? I've said that. I've said it's safe. It's completely psychological, isn't it? It's a psychological fear, except that when there is a crash, because it's so rare, it gets into the news. Wendy Wakelin says, I haven't been on a plane since our honeymoon 24 years ago. But before that, I did fly on Concorde a couple of times, which was great. Yeah, well, Concorde, of course, Wendy. Just waiting for that. I've now just had a fetching the stream. Bear with me. Concorde, of course, is, I suppose, the same as... didn't you have to take your own lump of coal on? You know, it's like a traction engine, isn't it? Concorde, with its nose and all of that. I think you'll find it did go through the sound barrier. Whatever happened with that? Did we ever never want to go through the sound barrier again, or was that just too fast for people? Mark Selwood says, staying with Nikki in Hounslow, I've never seen huge planes flying overhead so close. Every 10 minutes. So much power overhead. Yeah, can you imagine that? Luckily down here, we get planes, but they're very, very high. Where Julia lives, near the Shoreham Airport, they've got little mini planes. But yes, when I was up in doing my school for the Patron of Reading, it's quite near Heathrow, and if you go on the M25, you see these planes. Didn't one about 20, 30 years ago, I think, half land on the M25, didn't it? Just came down somewhere there. I always think they're going to drop down on my head. It is. I think personally, it does scare me. It's irrational, I know. Kevin, oh, they're all talking to each other. Alex Whitlock says that most of my flying has been to and from where I grew up. Was slightly apprehensive twice, he says. The first was flying to Brisbane on the first anniversary of 9/11. Oh, yeah. And the other was flying north from Brisbane, seatbelts all the way, and then the pilot told us it was the worst conditions he's ever encountered for 25 years of flying. Other than that, he says, I love it. I love it, he says. Which is great, I guess. What does he say? Especially the taking off, it is a proper rush. Yes, I mean, you pays your money, you take your risk, I suppose, don't you? Superman said it's still statistically the safest way to travel. Well, it's easy if you've got a red cape and you wear your underpants on the outside. Matthew says the big planes can glide as well. Google the Gimli, is it? The Gimli glider, and of course more recently the Miracle on the Hudson. Oh yes, that was yes, but nobody really wants to be in a plane that has to suddenly glide to a halt on the river, because you're then down to the expertise of that pilot, and he was then classed as a hero, and actually he shouldn't have been classed as a hero, really, should he? He should have been just doing his job. Plane's faulty, he just makes it land. That shouldn't be. I mean, we do see it as a heroic thing because it wasn't. But I remember listening to him and he says, I'm no hero, I was just doing what I'm paid to do, and that is, if we get in a crisis, land the plane where you can. But because not many pilots get to do that, I suppose, other than in a simulator, then, you know, when it comes to the real thing, it's slightly different. Fiona Cooper says, I'm having 2 weeks in Cornwall. Good luck. Yes, drive down, safest way. Andy Joy says, the wing has to flex. If it didn't, and it was rigid, it would just break off. Yes, I can see that. But this designer bloke obviously was seeing something different and something snapped. He probably got the sack because it wasn't supposed to do that. When we go to visit the Peak District, Richard, we can treat that as a holiday. No, 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 no. Oh, no, don't. I spent 2 weeks in America twice, one in 2006 and one in 2007. And I was travelling for 2 weeks. We did a 1,000-mile road trip on the first time, and similar thing on the second time, 2 different trips. And I was podcasting, I was putting up pictures, I was tweeting at the time. I don't really tweet now. Recording a podcast, oh yeah, and updating the blog. And I had somebody came with me on both of these, different person each time. And I was up at 6, and I was probably in bed by 10:30, 11, every day, working on the content, because people had paid for me to be there and go and do this. I don't like this. I'm not somebody who takes holiday. I can't just sit around and do nothing. I really struggle with any of that. So, to me, it wasn't a holiday, it was work. And this other guy kept always saying, you know, said, oh, couldn't we stop and do this? And couldn't we stop? And I had to remind them. Our viewers have paid us to do this. They haven't paid us to have a holiday. They paid us because they believe we will make the content and work. And so I don't really, even when we went to the thing we did last year, we went to Glastonbury with Julia, and we were out there doing our stuff, and okay, rain stopped play a bit, and it was quite new because it was doing videos instead of podcasting, which is different with audio. And then when Mark and I went, I think Mark was a bit, he was, what's the word I can say, surprised that I was up early, out filming in the morning sunrise, then pushing him that we're going out to do some more filming, and then we did our live show, which went a bit pear-shaped, but we did it. I just love what I do. Yeah, some days you get a bit tired, but generally I'm not good on holiday. I'm not good on not doing something, as it were. Especially if you're out, if you're away in the Peak District. God, I'd be wanting to film every 2 seconds. Sorry, missing out the comments. Coming to the end of the show, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you very much. I had a couple of other subjects, but you could wear your Vobes bikini. I'm not sure I could do that. Thanks, Emily. I have 2 weeks in Cornwall. Oh, yes. Andy Joyce says, oh, you've done that. Done that. Okay. Chrissy Nash. Hello, Chrissy. Nice to see you. Sorry, just trying to scroll the comments down. Where are you? He says, damn. Oops. Just missed it. Hang on, bear with me. Sorry, technical thing. Every time I move it up, it goes, somebody type something, which is what I want, of course. I'm not moaning. I've lost it completely now. Where are you? He says, we'll have to watch the rerun. Yes, sorry about that. Yes, you're right. Black metal, i.e. a form of heavy metal. Oh, right, a form of heavy metal. Is that something that comes... It's at Norway. Is that like you get heavy water, don't you? And what's the water, distilled water that you put in the car? I'm not quite sure what you mean. Vicky Allen... Oh, you mean music. Sorry, I'm being dense. Heavy metal as in music. Black metal, is that... Oh, okay, got it now. I haven't been on holiday for 6 years. I'm not bothered. I love taking day trips around the country. Well done, Vicky. I'm with you on that. Was the M1 where the... Oh, it was the M1. Was it? Oh, it's the M1. Thank you, Henry. It's basic physics, says Glenn. Good. Whatever that is. Oh, is that the wing thing? I think you are thinking of the plane that missed the runway at East Midlands and crashed onto the M6 or the M5 in the late 80s. Oh, there you go. Told you it was a few years ago. That's time ticking on. What I need is a... Just bear with me. This works better. I got the mouse on the thing here, so I can scroll. Hopefully I can... Because the mouse now isn't going to work on this surface, is it? Oh, that's typical. I haven't got another surface. Oh, wait a minute. Coming to the end of the show. Oh... When you need a surface, you haven't got a surface. Oh, blimey. Sorry, I have to go back to where I was to try and get this thing to scroll down a bit. Don't the crocodiles eat them? I'm not sure. Close to the Shoreham Air Show. That was, yes, and that the Shoreham Air Show one, it's amazing. It wasn't pilot error. Everybody thought it was going to be pilot error. Henry says, I went to Lockerbie once. Oh, dear. Couldn't help but think about the Pan Am jumbo jet disaster. Oops, absolutely. That was a horrific thing. Did a plane crash land on the M27 at Southampton? May well have done. I mean, you know, roads look like runways, don't they? So I'm glad that the pilots know what they're doing. Concorde was elitist and hellish expensive to fly. Would love to have been on it, however, except for the last landing. Yes, didn't it got some stuff on the runway, as I remember. And finally, funny thing is that most flight crew hate flying. Is that true? That's interesting. Judith Oakley says, in 1969, there was a plane crash near Gatwick, landed on a house, killing mum and dad, though their baby survived. Oh, wow. You often wonder who these people are. If the baby survived, where is that baby now and what do they think about it all? Best holiday I ever had was in Cornwall. St Ives was like being abroad, says Vicky. Dean Cooper says, it's me driving to Cornwall. As you know, I drive for a living along with Fiona, George, Bradley and Alfie. We meet up with Mark Selwood. Oh, lovely. Well, that would be great fun. And let's just get to the end of these comments because I've got to go. Things to do, people to see, phone calls to make, letters to write. Robert Crosser says, don't like to lie on a beach for a week and like to get out and about. Yeah, absolutely. I when I was with the lovely Harriet, she would go on holiday with her mum to somewhere like Croatia and sit on the beach and have, you know, all that sort of stuff. I couldn't do that. That's why I went once in the 10 years that I was with Harriet, once on holiday with her, and we went walking on Dartmoor, and that was it. I could not, and didn't go on the holidays. I couldn't stand her company, but of course, I just couldn't do those sort of holidays. So luckily she went with her mum who liked all that kind of stuff, and I just carried on doing what I do. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it's 1 minute past the hour. I've given you a minute more of the time than I intended to, so I should be asking for contributions, of course. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion. You've been brilliant, of course, and it's fascinating to hear your point of view because I know nothing about it. What do I know? I'm as ignorant as a bald man with glasses on the internet. But you guys are the real deal, so thank you so much. I'll be back again on Wednesday. Look after yourselves. If you are going flying, do practice your arm movements. And if you can't do that, we'll see you in A&E. Till the next time, thanks for watching. Take care, one and all. Lovely to see you. But I must diddly-daddly and skedaddle. So take care and bye for now. Goodbye. Goodbye.